Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our Raw Reaction review for Fear Street, Prom Queen.
When the it girls competing for prom queen at Shadyside High start to disappear, a gutsy outsider discovers she's in for one hell of a prom night.
Yes, Luke, we are at the fourth installment in Netflix's R.L. Stine kind of collaboration here with Fear Street, and I know this is kind of a bigger franchise for a lot of younger people. I feel like an old man saying that, and my opinions may reflect of that of my age. But this is something that I really saw pop off when they did that whole summer event where they did like 3 weeks, and everybody really liked that. And I have to admit, that's a very cool strategy. I think if you're going to release stuff on streaming, especially if you've already shot them back to back, like that would be really fun. But overall, I gotta say the Fear Street movies, I like the first one. I like the second one a little bit more. The third one kind of lost me, but overall, these aren't really my bag. So, Luke, where are you sitting on Fear Street Prom Queen?
Well, Fear Street in general, when they had come out with that trilogy and it was weekly installments, I'll be honest, I saw the first one, I saw half of the second one, and still haven't seen the third one. So, at the time that had come out, it just felt like it got sandwiched in between seasons of Stranger Things, where we were coming off a strong season with season 3, and then pandemic happened. We're kind of waiting for season 4, and we kept getting news, kept getting pushback from my recollection there. So it was kind of a big blur. And then this had come out in between that. And it just felt like almost a placeholder where we're waiting for Stranger Things. They were taking advantage of the nostalgia aspects of it. So the first one I thought was fine. The second one, I got halfway through and I was kind of pretty much done. And I'll be honest, I thought Prom Queen here was coming out in June. And then a couple weeks ago, it popped up and I was like, oh, this is coming out. So we better request a screener. And this one, honestly, Dylan, you know how this goes where we're requesting screeners. There are things you really want to see, and then there are things, well, we should probably cover it for the channel. And that's where I was with Prom Queen, where it's like, okay, not overly interested in this. The original trilogy did not really hit with me, but we'll give this one a shot and see how it is. And I'll say, I went into this with really no expectation. I will say, I think it exceeded those expectations because the bar was so low. And there's an aspect in here where I wasn't really feeling this film, but then we get to an element where I was like, okay, it knows what it is. It's not trying to achieve anything more than it is. And that's where it kind of got me more on board than I was coming into it.
That's fair. That's totally fair because, yeah, I really felt the faux 80s kind of flashy, washed out kind of stuff that I'm used to seeing with Netflix. Like, yeah, you mentioned Stranger Things. Stranger Things, I feel like as the seasons have gone on, especially in season 4, we've gotten a lot more to that. I don't know. I just feel like we're losing a grit or a grime that we would have with like an actual 80s horror film. And, there's nothing wrong with that. These movies definitely have their appeal. I do think there are some fun kills as far as just like presentation goes. Nothing too inventive, in my opinion. I thought the first film had a really inventive kill in the grocery store. But for me, there was nothing here that really stood out as like impressive, but I know that's kind of not what we're here for. They really much want to play on the kind of Scream whodunit mystery angle of who our killer is. The thing that really does at least save this movie for me from really just being completely turned off by it, I will agree, is the prom setting. I like being in the gymnasium. I like being with everybody there. I felt like it offered up some potential for some pretty unique stuff, and although I don't think they use it to the fullest, I think that they definitely captured like what you had said, where it was more just like they knew what they were going to do, they knew how like much more contained they wanted this movie to feel, and they went for it. And I can give them all the props in the world for that, even though this movie is just kind of middle of the road for me.
Yeah, and when you go into Netflix properties, especially from a nostalgia aspect, I don't think you're going to get anything that's going to be pleasing. It just kind of feels like a manufactured nostalgia. I've kind of come to terms with that, I think. When you look at a lot of other films that we get to cover, that they're able to encapsulate the 80s and not just kind of play the greatest hits. I think when you're getting into Netflix, you're not getting anything different here with Prom Queen. It does honestly feel like just they're manufacturing the 80s just to say, oh, a needle drop here, familiar actor on a poster on the wall here. I've only read a few of the Fear Street novels, and from what I recollect, I think this does uh, take a really different avenue than what we get from the actual book itself. So I
Mm.
think if you're familiar with Prom Queen, you're going to get something different here. They pull some DNA from it, from what I remember, but I think overall it's completely different. This does take place pretty much in, I think, one night of
Yeah.
just the prom setting, and that's where we're at. Now, I was surprised about some of the gore and some of the kills here. I
Mhm.
didn't know what this was rated going in, so I thought we were going to be more of a softer edge. But when we did get some aspects in here that I was like, that's a little bit jarring for me. I didn't know we were going to really cover this amount of gore with it. Now, we do get some of that CGI in here that doesn't really work that well. It's pretty jarring in certain scenes, maybe takes you out of it a little bit. But I enjoyed the attempt at the amount of gore that they were going to give. This is actually rated R, which did
Mhm.
surprise me. I don't know if the other ones are as well
They are.
because
I
okay.
just double checked while we were talking because I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're all rated R.
So, going into this a little more cold on the Fear Street trilogy, not really finishing that and not really knowing what to expect, I was surprised in that aspect because they do double down on some scenes here. And when we go into this is a slasher, so when we go into our slasher design here, I think I found some enjoyment. It's not overly unique. I did see on Bloody Disgusting that our boy Alex over there had a interview with Matt Palmer, and he talked about the
Mhm.
inspiration for Alice, Sweet Alice, which you can certainly see here with the trench coat. From a slasher design, they did try to present something a little bit different.
Yeah, and they definitely like I will give them all the props in the world that they do a very solid job throughout the three of these films by at least trying to get their intentions across of where their inspirations are coming from. And I do think that I commend them for having some deeper cuts, like you said, Alice, Sweet Alice. It's not like a horror film that gets talked about all that much. But it's nice to see them kind of paying homage to that. And these movies are completely non-offensive to me. Like, I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, these are trash or you shouldn't watch these. They're just, again, I they're consumable. They're very fast food horror in a sense where it's like, you kind of throw this on, you'll watch it maybe one time. It's fun, but it does nothing to leave an impact. It does nothing to make me say, man, I really hope we get another Fear Street. um Even though I do support this because I think these movies are important. I think that there's high school kids, especially, probably, I would say, you know people who are maybe freshmen or middle school to high school age. This is a really good place for them to start if they want to get into slashers and horror, because again, yes, it's a little bit bloodier than you'd expect, but also it kind of wears the whole tropiness on its sleeve. So it's a good way to introduce somebody, I feel like, to horror, and then you can really start to see, or like slasher horror at least, as it gets into the more gritty stuff, and then you can kind of slowly roll people into the harder and harder stuff until obviously we get to Terrifier 2.
I think this one did pleasantly surprise me because of that tropiness and doesn't break out of any sort of mold. So don't go into this expecting that. I certainly didn't. I figured at worst we were just going to get something that's recycled over and over and something so familiar. But I think there was an attempt to do something to bring that nostalgia aspect without it feeling overly forced. Because when we get into slasher elements, and obviously we're not doing spoilers, so I'll hold back on some aspects of it. They do something that I don't think appeared in the actual novelization with the slasher, and I like that aspect of it because
Mm.
I went into this not really expecting anything. So there's also an element in here between our main character and her best friend that it kind of I don't know if anyone else is going to get this, but I was like, if they do something that I felt like they were hinting toward, or they really could have taken advantage of, I was excited about it. But they didn't really take advantage of it. They went the safe route, I think, with the unveiling of where we get with this. So I don't think from that aspect expect anything that's going to be mind blowing. But I think this is rather digestible. I think you can turn this on, have some fun with it, especially if you're already subscribed to Netflix. I don't think this is going to be something that people are going to run out and start subscribing just because of Fear Street Prom Queen. But if you're already subscribed, I think you can turn this on, have some fun with it. It's just rather digestible. It's not breaking any molds, but it is reminiscent of a lot of iconic slashers. They do takes some beats, and I mean, you look at the poster; it's reminiscent of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So they do have some of that slasher DNA from the '80s in here, which they do take advantage of. But it's just something that is going to be really digestible for an audience, and probably reminiscent of other things that we've seen from the '80s.
Yeah, and again, I think these movies have their place. If you're a hardcore horror fan who's like looking for the next exciting, really great slasher, you're probably not going to get that here. But if you are, again, just looking for a fun Friday night, maybe you and your significant other can sit down, throw this on, and just like again, kind of watch it very passively. I feel like that would be a very appropriate place for this. And on the whole, I think the biggest like issue I could give this movie, because again, where my complaints come from, it's mostly just comes down to personal taste and opinion. So I don't want to get to it because overall, it's like I knew what I was getting. I knew that it was going to be really clean. And overall, I don't think they did a bad job with how they shot everything and how it looks. It's just again that kind of faux 80s that I don't really care for. Where this movie I think falters the most though is probably just the characters as a whole, like our main group of characters. I didn't really find anybody all that memorable. I honestly, there were moments towards the beginning where I was getting lost as to who's who and what's going on, even though I'm just watching the movie. Um, I feel like the only movie out of this trilogy that really had that character for me, that kind of had that star power, was the second one because of Sadie Sink. I think that she brought something to that character that felt very authentically 80s camp slasher. But for me, it's just kind of meh. It is just one of those things. It's disposable, it's consumable. But again, it has its place, so I can't hate on it too hard. For me, I will be kind and give this a worth a watch, just because I do genuinely feel that way, even though I've seen it now and I may never go back to it.
Yeah, and we it seems like we're almost on either side of the coin here, but honestly, I'm going worth a watch as well. With this film, it's so digestible, and I understand what you're saying about the character
Mhm.
work. I think there's acting that borderline terrible in this, and while I was taking notes, it was a big strike. Then we got to a dance sequence, and I was like, I think they are tapping into that DNA of just tropey characters bombarding you with a lot of stuff. There's a pretty high, a decently high, I wouldn't say overly high body count in this. And, they really take advantage of the slasher subgenre here. So very digestible, nothing overly offensive from my end here. I think this one, it's worth a watch because it is digestible and it's nothing I'm going to go back to. Honestly, I don't find myself scrolling through Netflix and saying I'm going to turn on Prom Queen. I think this is a one and done, but I found some enjoyment with it. So this one, I think you can have some fun, but you're not getting anything that's going to be breaking the mold. But you get some decent kills, some bad CGI, and some reminiscent of the '80s here. So worth a watch for me.
Some good songs. There are a couple of good songs in here, so I can give them that for sure. But I agree with. I think all the movies have done really well as far as like doing some throwback music here and there and there. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up here, guys, for Fear Street Prom Queen. Let us know down below. Are you going to be checking this bad boy out this weekend? I know the embargo for this is like right as the movie comes out, so maybe you've already seen it by the time you're watching this review. I don't know. Let us know. But yeah, we have a lot of great stuff up on the channel. Lots more to come. I got a list video coming out here later actually just came out. Getting my whole schedule crossed here. But yeah, no problems there. So definitely let us know down below what you think of Fear Street and Fear Street Prom Queen. And that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horse shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.